Kahani Bar brings you a new segment, Just Stories. And today we bring you Who Is There? The air in Kasauli carried a strange chill that night. Though it was midsummer, Ketki, a writer seeking solitude for her new novel, had rented a quaint British-era cottage perched on the edge of a dense pine forest. The locals had warned her of the area's peculiar history, but she dismissed their tales of hauntings as folklore meant to spook tourists. Nobody knew who owned the place. No one had stayed in that cottage for decades. Bansi, the young caretaker, also never stayed there. He would come once in a while to clean the place. The responsibility of looking after this place was handed over from father to son for many generations in their family. It was now like a traditional ritual that needed to be carried out. As dusk fell, a mist began to creep through the forest, curling around the cottage like an uninvited guest. Ketki sat at her desk, typing on her laptop, when she heard a faint tapping at the window. She froze. The cottage was at the edge of a cliff, and this window opened to the valley view below. No one could possibly stand outside that window. She pulled the curtain aside and saw nothing but darkness. Shaking off her unease, she returned to her writing. But the tapping resumed, this time louder and more insistent. Her pulse quickened. She could hear her heartbeat thumping in her ears. But she was not the one to be scared easily, so she gathered her wits. Determined to confront her fear, she grabbed the flashlight that was kept by her laptop on the table and walked towards the main door. She stepped out. It was a full moon night, but the fog had thickened and she could not see beyond a few feet in spite of the powerful flashlight she held in her hand. There was no one out there. The forest was eerily silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. She followed the beam of light, which seemed to guide her deeper into the woods. And then there was this rustling of the leaves a few steps in front of her. She could see that the leaves were crumbling, as if someone was walking in front of her. She stopped. And then the rustling of the leaves crumbling too stopped. She took a step forward, and to her amazement, the leaves rustled and crumbled under the feet she could not see. Deep in her heart she knew she could walk back to the safety of the cottage, but she felt some unexplained power urging her to follow the invisible but inviting footsteps. She followed in some kind of trance. About 50 steps in, the invisible feet vanished, and she stumbled upon a clearing with an old crumbling well. The stones were slick with moss, and a strange cold emanated from its depths. She pulled her wrap tighter around her. As she peered into the well, the mist thickened, and a voice, a soft, whispering voice, called a name she was not familiar with. Rati. Rati. She staggered back, heart pounding. The voice was faint, but distinct, almost melodic. She swung her flashlight around, but the light seemed to be swallowed by the mist. Suddenly, she felt a hand brush her shoulder. She spun around, but no one was there. The thumping of her heart became louder in her ears. She was now standing by the well and shivering, out of fright or cold. She could not tell. A strange figure appeared on the opposite side of the well from where she was standing. She could see the silhouette of a tall young man did you leave me, Rati?" the figure whispered, its voice heavy with sorrow. Ketki froze. Her mind raced, but she couldn't move. The figure stepped closer, and the air grew colder with each step. "I waited for so long," it said, its voice cracking. Ketki stammered, Who are you?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised an arm, pointing towards the old well. He suddenly appeared by her side and said, "Don't be frightened. I can never harm you. I'm at peace now that I know you are well. I will always be by your side. You have nothing to fear." He opened his fist and Ketki fainted. The next morning, Ketki was found unconscious near the well, clutching a weathered locket in her hand. Bansi helped her back to the cottage, and when she finally awoke, her trembling hands opened the locket. Instead, inside was a faded photograph of a woman, and it was unmistakably Ketki. Her heart raced. She didn't remember posing for such a photograph or having those earrings, nor did she own a locket like this. It felt ancient, worn by time. That night, as she sat by the fireplace, fragmented memories surfaced in her mind. A life long past, a love that ended in tragedy, and a promise made at the edge of the same well. The figure she had seen, the whispers that called her name, it was him, the man she had once loved, a man she had vowed to return to, even if lifetimes separated them. As realization dawned, Ketki felt a strange calm wash over her. She stepped outside into the misty forest. The air was lighter, and the eerie chill was gone. For the first time, the pine grove seemed peaceful, as if the weight of sorrow had lifted. In the distance, by the well, she thought she saw a figure one last time. He looked at her, his face soft and full of gratitude. His lips moved as if to say, "Thank you." Then he faded into the mist, leaving only the locket in her hand as proof of his existence. Ketki left Kasauli the next morning, her heart heavy yet oddly full. She couldn't explain the events of that night to anyone, but she knew the truth deep within. A soul had waited lifetimes to find her, and now, reunited, it had finally found peace. But it was Ketki who was restless now. She felt the presence of someone always with her from that day on. The cottage remains quiet to this day. The tapping at its windows has ceased, and the locals say the forest feels less haunted. And why not? For Ketki had returned to live there, now almost 80 years old. The locals say that they see her often in the misty nights, sitting by the well, as if chatting with someone for hours on end.
This is Richa signing off. Take good care of yourselves till I'm back with the next story.